Hi, good day. I'm going to talk in this recording on project risk management. We're going to cover today the course outcome, identify risks, and possible solution. In the previous lectures, previous recording, we talked about project scheduling, we talked about understanding project management. Now the new outcome that we're going to cover in this lecture and the activities related to this lecture is identify risks and possible solutions. So I view risk in the perspective of an opportunity, but this opportunity has also a challenge with it. So if I take a risk here, I could picture that there is an apple on the head of the guy, and there is a chance for killing me if things go wrong. But if things go back, then there is a chance of hitting the apple. So a project risk, if we do things in a correct way, then that is an opportunity and we succeed. If we do things we do not manage that risk, we do not hit the apple in the right place, then the project is going to run bad and we're going to lose money. And the challenge for the project management is actually to hit the apple and to succeed. Basically, in a project, most of the good part of the time is on managing risk, is not in scheduling, but actually for project management is in identifying risks and managing risk, because there are the opportunity, there are the success, and through controlling the risk, they can gain money. So, to give you here a view of what is a risk, we have a few questions. So you can ask yourself, why do you buy health insurance, car insurance? Is it possible to achieve all the project objectives? Why some company work on a product and others no? So you might pause here this recording, think about the answer to these questions, then get back. In my opinion, it is not possible to achieve the project objectives all the time, but we have to work hard in order to do that, unless the objectives are small. If I plan to get a C in this course, then that objective is simple and is going to be achieved as long as I do the minimum job, right? But if my goal is to have an A, then it is harder to do that. So, why do we buy health insurance or car insurance? Because it is possible that we are going to have problems, something can go wrong, and we want to cover for that. We want that the community that have that insurance, that owns that insurance organization, or there is a company there that is going to cover for the insurance. From the other side, obviously, the insurance, they have statistical models such that they are going to win. The chances that you are going to have insurance, health problems or car problems, they are lower than the premium that you pay, or at least everyone pays. Some company they work on a product because they have control over the risks. They have frameworks. They have the capability to achieve the objectives, while others they do not have that, and that is why they do not work on this product. So the thing on the cost, the relationship between the costs and the benefit or the outcome of the project. In general, people they think that the outcome should be more than the cost, and if I'm going to have benefit more than the cost, then that is worth the project is worth to work on, or the product is worth to work on. However, this cost, they might think about this cost as it includes the risks or not. And the fact is that it is not that the cost that I am going to consider here, and the cost here, I could say that for project cost, as we've seen before, I'm going to have my estimate for the human resource that I use, the hardware and the administrative costs that I have, and that should be less than the outcome, the project benefit. But I should consider the risks of success because it's possible that my estimation for the schedule is not going to work. And there are reasons for not working. And my goal is to identify these risks, the things that might not work, and consider them in the benefit because this is how life it is. It is possible that for I'm going to lose my project because of one of the risks that we'll talk about them in a moment. So what is risk? So simply you can categorize risk as the following. When there is a success, we got the opportunity and then we can party. When there is a failure, then there are losses, and potentially going to ask, why did this happen? But why did this happen is probably late at the moment. It is good for the next project, but it is late for that particular project. And if we control the risk, then we are going to succeed and we can party, right? And this is what we like, party. So let's get now to more formal definition of risk. By the way, if you Google for the risk, you will find a lot of definitions. Some of them they come from English, some they are related to specific context. Please be aware that the concept that we talk in the course, they are mostly technical, that known by the expert. And it's possible that even for the expert project manager and so on, they might use different definition. So we focus on this course. I'm giving one, or in general, so one definition that we use in the course, even if it's possible. Even sometimes I give more, but the focus is on one. So keep the definition that we give in class. Those are the one. Keep in mind that those are the one that I would ask about question for in quiz, in assignment, and so on. And don't just rely on what you can find in Google search. So risk here is the potential of gaining or losing something of value. This definition comes from actually our Project Management Institute book. So when we talk about value here, it could be physical health, it could be social status, emotional well-being, or financial health. So the values, they can be gained or lost when taking a risk resulting from given action or inaction. So we will be faced with thing and with aspect, and as in that aspect, we can take action and we get value. We cannot take action, and again here also there is a result of that. The risks, they could be foreseen and they could be unforeseen. So it is possible that there is a potential that this risk is going to happen, and it's also that you don't know. So then here, if we recap this, the risk could be also defined as an intentional interaction. So we interact with uncertainty, we interact with something that we do not know. So you are now junior student, some of you are senior student, and you started working on a project, and you've probably realized that projects are not the assignment where you have the question is well framed and the expected answer is well defined. In project, in the context of project, it's not. There are goals and there is uncertainty in achieving these goals. And here you are interacting with that uncertainty. So you don't know whether you're going to achieve it or not. And that is the risk, that comes the risk. So risk is an uncertainty to achieve the goal and while you are interacting with that project. So if we summarize here, a risk is about an unwanted event that we do not want in general. There is a chance that this event is going to occur. And if that event happens, then there is a cost for it. That is the negative, the passive part. But in the active part, that event, there is a cost to address them. It's like a fight. And in a fight, there is a cost to address that. And there is actually an opportunity if that does not occur. So if these risks do not occur, then there is we get an opportunity. If there is no fight, and you can grab the goal, then that is a plus. If there is a fight, then you're gonna do that fight. And if you don't do the fight, if you do not address that risk, then there is a cost that you are going to pay, and that cost can be important. If the cost is not important, then we would not consider that risk, right? So in software engineering, or in general in project management, we have 4 categories of risk. There are the technical risks. They are related to the, let's say, to the software that you are using, to the framework that you are using, to the hardware that you are using. There are aspects related to the costs, to the budget, to the money, increase in the salary, for example. So that is cost risk, right? There are problems related to scheduling, things that are related to delay. If you are waiting for the delivery of specific software, or you are you are relying on a framework that you are going to use from another company, then they delay delivering their framework to you so you could do your work. So those are scheduling risks. There are risks that are contractual risks. So you made a contract and then things, they go wrong. For example, it is possible that you have in your contract a penalty for the delay. Then given the pandemic that we have, you were forced to delay the delivery of your software, then you have penalty there, and you should consider those contractual risks, those penalty when you should consider the risk associated with these contract items. So in project risk management, we have 4 main activities. And these activities, they are cyclic. So it is iterative. The first activity is identify risks, which we're going to talk in a moment. The second activity is evaluate the risks or assess the risks. The third activity is to monitor the project to identify when the risks occur. And the last activity is to respond to the activity when they occur. And again here, to go back and you can identify again the potential risks of the project. So the identify risk does not happen at the beginning of the project that you are done, but it is an activity that you are going to do it most of the time. So in the project, so you have to stay vigilant on the potential risks for a project as the project progresses. It's not only at the beginning. You do it at the beginning, but you do it later on. So let's get an example of the risk here. For how do you consider COVID-19 a risk for the project? So I got here an extract from the internet. As I'm writing this article, COVID-19, should project risk management take the pandemic into consideration? And the question here should we consider that pandemic all the time whenever we plan a risk, the risk for the project that we have that. So there is pandemic, and yeah, that is. Would I consider that this event, if it happens, then it's gonna cost us, and there is a chance that this event is gonna happen. So we have COVID-19 at the moment, but would it be possible that it would be other pandemic? And we should account for this in project management. So now we talked about risks and what is the nature of risk when we talk, what is the nature, what is risk, and let's get now to the first thing that we want. The first thing, let's get technical, and we want to identify the risks. There are 6 known techniques for risk identification. The first one is expert judgment. And again, here, if you have someone who has experience in that particular topic, then you should consult them and get from them the risks that they faced or the things that they faced in the project, such that you can account for. The second thing is the document, to review the document of the project. The third is to use some diagramming to identify the risks. The fourth is to use the technique, the SWOT analysis. The fifth is to use checklists of risks. And the sixth, which is the main thing, is to brainstorm the risks. So when we talk about documentation, to review the documentation here, we take the previous project files, like, for example, project proposal, like architecture, any document that are related to the project that has been done so far, and we analyze these documents. We also can review the contract. We check what are the technical clauses in the contract. And in this document, we check for the assumptions that have been made. So when we do scheduling, for example, there's plenty of assumptions that we put there. For example, that we have enough experience in a particular framework, or that particular developers, they have enough skills to work on, let's say, part that is embedded part, or a web interface part. So we identify the assumptions that have been made in working on the project artifacts, and also identify consistency between the document, the different document, that the same information is in different places. If there is inconsistency, then automatically you jump that there is potential risk there. There are some things that different people, they perceive differently, and there is a risk there. The third technique is the diagramming techniques. And here, for example, here we have the cause and effect diagram, or there are other diagrams like process flow diagram. We could use this diagram to identify also the risks, which are the weaknesses. So we take what is the problem that we have. So what is the big problem that we have? We're going to lose money, or we're going to delay the project. And what are the causes of, let's say, delaying the project? What would be the causes of delaying the project? So there would be potentially technology, causes related to technology, causes related to teams, causes related to communication, and it's possible that there are other causes. And we use these they would be considered as the risks, since those are events that could occur, and if they occur, they could cause the problem. And for example, the problem is the delay of the project, or the cost of the project is going to increase. So we would use such diagrams to reason about. So here, this technique allows to reason about the risk, right? So another aspect, another technique that we use for the risk is what we call the SWOT here. And the SWOT here is for strength, S, weaknesses, W, opportunity, and threats. So we analyze here the impact of the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunity, and threat of the organization itself. So analyze the impact of these things on the project. So I give here an example. For example, if we know that in that organization, the employees, there is a high turnover for the developers. We know that we have here, this is a weakness of the company, and we know that we have a problem there. So we have to account for that problem in the risk. For the strength, we know that the company, let's say I take England, and they have a framework for data analytics. So that is the strength. And that strength, I'm going to use it for the when talking about the project. It is possible that also we have many skilled developers. So if I take, for example, SAP, they have many of the developers, they are there for over 20 years, and they are well qualified, and they have actually excellent experience. The counter thing for that is their salary are high, obviously, and that constitutes the weaknesses. They constitute the. So checklist. Here in each company, at the end of the project, they should have a meeting where they could identify the lesson that they learned from project, which is good practice. And those lessons would be integrated into the knowledge base for managing project, including the checklist for the risks. So if, let's say, some bad event happened, like now the pandemic happened to the project, the good practice is to take that and to use that as a lesson and to put it in a checklist for the risk that next time when we have a project, we need to account for pandemic. Common here risks in the project, for example, the limited experience of project manager. We got project manager that they just graduated, and they have the potential to be a good project. They communicate very well. They are leader. They acknowledge the technology that they have, and especially if they are a master student. So they have a deep expertise in that particular topic, and it is good to give them to lead the project. So, but they have limited experience in managing project. We are depending on a new contractor. We hired a new contractor that we don't know how they are going to perform. So we're going to have that. We are going to plan to use the project is innovative, and we're going to use a technology that is immature. It's a new framework, and with a new language probably. So things are new, and it's possible things they are new. So there will be bugs, there potentially high number of bugs. Obviously, it's possible. A lot of people don't know much about that technology, so it is immature already. And no specialized developers in the technology. So we want to work on topic, but our developers, they are not specialized. So let's say now the team, they are used on developing web application, but suddenly we have the project that we got uses cyber physical system, and we need to do some development on some sensors. So we do not have specialized developers to work on that. We need to work on the project. Someone needs to do the job, but that is a risk. There is a limited participation of customer in requirement elicitation. We plan to work on the project, but based on previous experience, we have some customers that are reluctant to participate in the requirement elicitation, mostly because the individual who should give us the requirement, they are not interested. They do not have incentive to do that, and then we have problem. And if we do not know well the requirement, then we are going to make assumption, and the customer at the end, they're not going to like the outcome of the project. They're going to give us the requirement, but that would be rework. That would require to rework the project, obviously. Here. Inexperience with big project. So let's assume now you are a student, and I'm seeing here even for the submission, when I ask for the cost of the project, many they are giving 2,000, 3,000, or some they're giving a small amount. This is because you used so far too small project. And if we are talking about project management, we're talking about bigger project, at least it's going to be a few weeks of work, if not so a few months or years. So if you are used to a project that you could finish in a few nights, 2 or 3 nights, and then you are assigned to work on a project for 6 months, then you do not have experience in that. And we have to account, as project manager, we have to account for that. Limited knowledge of the technology. So I talked here about sensors, the frameworks, and so on. No previous local experience with geographical distributed system. So let's assume that we are going to develop a system that is going to run here in US and is going to run also in Europe, but we do not have experience with running such distributed system. The main thing is there is communication between those two places. If you did distributed database where you have the data in both places and you thought you're going to synchronize it, good luck, because there will be delay in the synchronization. So there are plenty of issues there. And if you do not have experience with those kind of contexts, then you should account for that as a risk. So at the moment, we say that there is an event, which is the risk, that is going to potentially happen. And if it happens, then there is problem. It is possible that we're going to have limited experience of project manager. It is possible that we are going to depend on a new contractor. And when I say here possible, that possibility could be high, that chance could be high and could be low. Do I know that? Probably I know, but at the moment I'm not focusing on how much that limited experience that the project manager, the experience of the project manager is limited. So I don't know I might know that we have our knowledge of the technology is limited. How much limited? That is another story. At the moment, we know that this is limited. This is our goal, which is identify risks. So the last technique is to do brainstorming. As a project manager, in general, this is how it should happen. It happens in company, and it should happen. The project manager or whoever is assigned to do the work, he prepares his job or his homework. Then they are going to go to a meeting with other peoples. And at that moment, in those meetings, they are for brainstorming. And at that moment, they are going to identify much more work. So in brainstorming meeting, I could see here, this is the, for example, picture here. How long will the SMUG program take? No problem. And the lady from the other side, complexity of the requirement, stability of the requirement, team skills required, policy implications. So are there policy implications? Do we have the skills? So then, this is going to take 3 days. And we can see that there is a difference between no problem and 3 days. And this is the delay. And the delay at the beginning, we did not already identify the risk, but at the second part, we identified the risk. And that is why we thought that there is 3 days. If there is penalty in the contract, which is not the case obviously here, then in the first one, we're going to pay the penalty, right? And that's what we pay when we do not study the risks. The second one, we studied the risks. The customer is happy, they're going to pay for that. That's a chance things can go wrong. and then we are going to gain those 300. So there is a difference between paying the money for penalties and actually getting the money from the customer. So in the brainstorming sessions, we ask the question, what might go wrong, in a simple English language. So what may go wrong? And then after that, we would ask what would prevent us from achieving the objectives. We have a set of objectives, let's say deliverables for a project, and we're going to ask for each of these deliverables, what would prevent me from achieving this? So for each one. The third is, what assumption did we make? So we have a schedule, we have an architecture. What are the assumptions that we have there? And here, if you have work breakdown structure, you might use that in the brainstorming. Again, here, the work breakdown structure, you might use, let's say, the deliverable on the second level, and then you have details, and you're going to ask what would prevent me from achieving each of these, or each of the leaves in the work breakdown structure. So asking this question, what would stop me from succeeding? What assumption do I have here? So what might go wrong allows to identify the project risks similar to the one that I have here, but that would need to be more accustomed to the particular project. So in the practice for this recording for this lecture, I give here a small project, and the goal of the project is to develop a low-cost fleet monitoring system. It includes a device installed in a bus that collects data from their in-vehicle network and sends them to a remote server along with the location. So I'm going to post here the link, a few pages, 2 pages for this fleet monitoring system that has been done by a senior design team. And the deliverable here for the project are the data collection component, where we have a component that we are going to plug to the car. And this component, this device, has a component that is going to listen to the network, the traffic between the component inside the car, the brakes, the pedals, and so on, gas pedal, and send this information to remote server, and which is obviously in, let's say, in a cloud or in the company's server. But the system also includes a web application that we could use to visualize the position of the vehicle. So we can see, for, let's say, if I have fleet management, I have a set of trucks or a set of cabs, I would know where the cab is running. Similar to so where the cab is running. And we could see also the set of information that the information that we collected on the cab. For example, that we could see the level of the fuel, we would see the speed, we would see whether they put the seat belt or not. So we have those information. We could also have here a web application that allows to run ad hoc statistics. So we could make queries on the fly, and then we could get the result. For example, I would check what is the driving distance for each. I have a set of a driver, and what is the distance that they drove so far since their assignment. I could have a query where I'm going to check what is the driver that they are speeding, so they exceed the speeding limit. So I could run these. So that is the project. Obviously, for the senior design project, we focused on the first one and partially the second deliverable. We did not work on the third one. They started on that, but we did not. But for the purpose of the risk management, we're going to get those the description for all the 3 deliverables. So So the second activity in the risk management process is the evaluation of the risk. In the previous activity so far, we talked about identifying risks, and now it's the time to assess these risks. There are two approaches for the evaluation of the risk. One is the qualitative approach, and the second one is quantitative approach. So in the first one, qualitative approach, obviously our goal here is to know how bad these risks are. What is the chances and what is the impact of this risk? So the goal for this for this approach is to rank the risks, to know which one are the most important that we take. We need to care about them. So we need to rank and prioritize the risk. That is our goal, so that we could focus on the risks that are of high quality, that have high risk, and we need to mitigate them. The risks that have a lower priority, or they are on the rank, they are less, or they're not, then they are not very important, and then we might not focus on them. So so we have two main parameters. There are different people that they use different metrics to evaluate the risk, but the basic ones that everyone agree on, we focus on the occurrence of the risk, what is the chance that the risk is going to happen, and the impact of the risk, what would happen when this risk occur. So what is the impact of this risk? What is the bad thing? And the risk exposure here, we use the term exposure to combine these both. So we need to have a metric that combines the occurrence and the impact in order to rank and prioritize the risks. So ranking and prioritize the risk requires one metric, only one. And for that, we need to combine both the occurrence, the chances to happen, and the impact of the risk. This actually allows us to control the level of certainty here. So let's first talk about the probability of occurrence of the risk. So we would say that this risk is improbable, it is unlikely to happen, and we could develop here, we could think about, let's say we are talking about something that is going to happen in the life of the project. So we could say, we could set a period 3 months, or we could say period like in the life of the project. I would say one is improbable. If I talk, let's say in pandemic, so far probably that has been improbable. The probability that this will happen is almost zero. Now we know that this is not, and then we might change. The second here occurs. So remember, when we talk about qualitative, we could say those are fuzzy terms or fuzzy numbers: improbable, remote, occasional, probable, and frequent. So it is possible that this is improbable. It is possible that this is remote. So it is unlikely, but it is possible. So probability here 0.001. Let's say now pandemic would say that. It is occasional. That could happen sometimes. So between 0.05 and 0.1. So 5 chances in, let's say 100, 1 in 20 cases you're gonna get it, or 1 in 10 ones you're gonna get it. Let's say if we talk about one team member are going to leave the company. If I have a team of 10, and I'm expecting that by the end of the project, one is going to leave, then this is going to be occasional for me, right? So 1 in 10 is going to leave by the end of the project. It is probable, so it is expected to happen, and the chances here between 0.1 and 0.3, or it is frequent, then will happen several times. I'm sure that this problem is going to happen a few times. So I'm going to use the term here, frequent. So the first parameter that we use in the evaluation of the risk and in ranking the risks was the occurrence of the risk. The second is the impact of the risk. And the impact here, we identify the dimensions of the impact. That dimension could be, or what we call the area of the risk. Could be the schedule, could be the budget, could be the health, could be the reputation, and there are potentially other aspect. So reputation here, it's going to go to reputation mostly of the company. So it's going to impact the reputation of the company. And if it impacts badly the reputation of the company, then we might lose money. It might concern here the health of the developers or the health of the customer. So we have to consider that. It might concern project delays of the project, delaying the project, so that we need to also no, sorry, for the schedule, this concerns the delay, but for the budget, this concerns the cost of the project. So the impact, it could be negligible, could be small, and we are not going to care about it. Could be minor. So if we have, for example, late month, 1 month in on the life of the project, and there is no penalty, so we might say that this is minor. If the project is actually 1 month and then there is a delay of 1 month, obviously this is not a minor impact. The delay could be the impact could be serious. So if we have, let's say, 3 months of delay in a project that is, let's say, 2 years, but there is a 10% penalty. This is a serious problem that we have to address. This is critical. So late less than 6 months, between 3 and 6 months, and we have 20% penalty. This is a really big problem that we have to take care about. It is possible, this is the top, it is catastrophic, and we have a delay more than 6 months, and then we have 20% penalty. So I've seen in projects, I was working on one of the projects, we were happy when we got the deal, and that was a big organization, and we got a good project, about 700, I think at that time, 700,000. That was 15 years ago. So we were happy on the project, but in time when we got it, it started the politics in the organization, and then the leadership changed. And the new leadership, obviously, they do not know what is the project is about, and their goal is that they can show themselves, right? It happens that because of all of the things that changed, the description of how, or the plan of success that was set up to succeed the project, including the architecture, including the schedule, they were not followed, and other aspects, other plans, other strategy, they were followed. It turns out that at some point that company didn't deviate from the success, and things start to be bad. So the owner of the company has a big house and he has a lot of money, and to get the project, to get people to work on the project and have the resources to work on the project, he needed to put his house or things that he owns collateral for the bank to get the money. And that project, after some time, it did not turn out to be correct. The company did not actually deliver what it promised in the contract and in the technical document. And what happens? That guy who was the owner of a mid-sized company, he lost his house. He lost the company. He had to work for another company. Because of this mismanagement of this change of leadership. And that is a common aspect. When you change leadership, some company, they succeed or they do much more better. But in general, in a project, if it's laid down, then if there is a change, then there is high chance that this can fail. And this obviously is one example of catastrophic project. That project was delayed, and because of that delay, they have to accrue penalty, and to get out of that, they had to sell the project to other company that they can work with, and they deliver the project. The second company, they delivered the project at some point. So we can see here example how things can go wrong. So when we talk about risk exposure, we talk here, I got this similar to, in general, what we do. So you have the consequences of failure, and we have here the ranking. It is going to be very low, and this is when we talk about consequences of failure, talk about the impact. It could be very low, and it could be low, it could be medium, it could be high. But also the probability of failure or the occurrence, it could be very low, it could be low, it could be medium, it could be very high or high. And in the exposure here, I said it's a combination of the occurrence and the impact, or the combination of the consequences of failure and the probability of failure. And in general, we represent that using a matrix. And in this matrix, when we have, let's say, the consequence of failure, the rank is 1, and the probability of failure, the rank is 1, then the exposure is very low, as you can see here. So exposure is very low. But when it comes that the consequences of failure is 2, and then the probability of occurrence is 3, then the chances are higher to happen, and they have impact, so it becomes medium. If I go and the consequences of failure is 5, but the chances that this has happened is 1, like pandemic, for example, COVID, then the exposure is very high. So since actually the impact is very high, then even if it's the chances to happen is small, then this should be high. But what actually, if the probability of occurrence is occasional, so we lose people from time to time. Sorry. We lose people from time to time, but when we lose these people, we lose a lot of their knowledge. So in that case, it depends on how bad that the impact of that loss is. It could be in the level of 4, or it could be in level of 5. And if it is a level of 5, then the risk exposure is very high. So when I say the risk exposure is very high or high, company, they need, as a project manager, I need to really think about this, these risks. So in your practice, in the same practice exercise, I give you here 3 risks. Risk 1, limited participation of customer risk elicitation. Second is a change of scope of the project. So we have a definition of the project and a set of deliverables, but the customer requested that we change the scope of the project. We change the description, the high-level description of the project. There are team change here, team members that are going to leave the company, and there is limited experience of project manager. You are new to project manager, and you are given the to manage a project. And you are asked in this assignment to make a table like this and to specify what is the chances for each of these risks to happen. So the occurrence, you're going to say whether this is improbable, whether this is occasional, and so on. The same. In the description of the, sorry, here, in the description of the, yes, I'm sorry. So you're going to say, what is the chances that things will happen based on the based on the slides when I talk about the occurrence, so you can check what is the probability. Then you would think about the impact of the, rate the impact of the risk, and again, whether this is really a critical or it is catastrophic and so on. So you specify one of these. So let me go back here. For the impact, you're going to select one of these: negligible, minor, serious, critical. And for the probability of occurrence, you're going to select one of these 5 too, again here. You should have a reason. You should think, you should not throw the numbers here, but you should have a reason. You might be going to throw a number now for this assignment, but in practice, these value, they are associated to money, and they are associated to success or failure. So you should really give deep thought and do good homework, try to get enough information and reason about that. For example, if I talk about change of scope, how actually the scope of the project is laid out, how confident the team or the customer is with the description. So, and did we have experience with the customer? Did they have to change the scope before of the project or not? So I'm gonna make deep thoughts, so I could have a reason behind my rating, right? In the project, I'm not asking for those things, and I'm asking that you specify here the occurrence and the impact because we are studying techniques. But in real life, you need really to justify those choices, to have strong reasoning for these choices because it's associated with success or failure, as I said. You might do it at the beginning, and you could, in your first project, and you would have rating that are not that good, but you're going to realize later that the impact of these choices and you that would push you to give you more experience to on how actually you could do this in better job and better succeed. The risk exposure here, you might use this table where you have the high catastrophic from the impact and high occurrence, so will be very high. So you choose for the exposure one from the one from here very low, low, very high, based on whether what is the rating of the impact and what is the rating of the occurrence for that particular for each of these four risks. So we're going to talk now about quantitative risk evaluation. In quantitative risk evaluation, companies, when they have business, let's say SAP, Microsoft, they collect a lot of data on how actually they organize, they did the work. We talked initially before on the capability maturity model and how these companies, they use this information in order to improve themselves and to make sure that they are going to repeat their success. But this historical data could be used for quantitative models. So if I have, let's say now I have pandemic happened once, then that become now historical data that I'm going to use it when I talk about the occurrence and impact because I know what is the impact and I know what is the occurrence. We might use here probability distribution. You get people that they give you the occurrence and you get different team members that they specify their perception of. I'm going to use here all the time the term perception because it depends on the person. So we get the occurrence, we get the impact of each of the people, and then we use beta distribution to better distribute to make sure that their assessment is correct. We need to support the study. We need to support the study with of the cumulative impacts of dependent risk. If there is a risk that depends on another risk, then the occurrence and the impact needs to consider the dependent risk, right? And we need also to check the sensitivity of the project objectives to this risk. So those are two other things that we need to consider. Another concept that we have in risk estimation is the risk tolerance. And we have some risks that are, we talk that there are risks that are very, so based on the exposure here, very high. There are risks that they have, their exposure is high, medium, low, and very low. So we need to transform that to the risk tolerance. And the risk tolerance here, do we tolerate specific that particular risk? Which risk do we tolerate? So we can see here if we have severity is actually negligible, the impact is negligible, and the occurrence is negligible and probable, then will be tolerable. We're going to tolerate that risk. We're not going to make any measures to address it. If the risk is frequent and then it is catastrophic, Then if, let's say, we have a lot of fight inside the team members, by the team members, then this is frequent. So we get that, let's say, every week. Then that is frequent. And then the impact of that impacts the collaboration between the team and the deliverable. So we would say that we can cause delay. Then will be critical. Then that problem is intolerable. We have to solve the problem. So we have to have a strategy on how to address that problem. So if the risk here, risk, let's say, is remote, so it might happen now, let's say, for the pandemic for the next time, it might happen, but when it happens, it's catastrophic, then the risk is high. So when the talk is intolerable, obviously we have to address it. When the risk is high, it depends on our appetite, on the organization appetite, or the project management appetite to risks. If I have the resources, I have the capability to have a strategy, I'm going to set a strategy to address also for the high risks. So we see on the diagonal, we have M, which is for medium. These are, we might tolerate, we might not. The low is they are, so here low tolerable, and the T is we allow that. So we do not have a problem with that. So we go back now to the risk management process. We talked about the identification of the risk. We talked now about the assessment and evaluation of the risk. We know which risks that we can tolerate, which risks that we do not tolerate. So now we got a plan, right? So we have a plan. Now the next stage is to monitor the risk. Recall that the main job of project manager is to control the risks. Things will happen, and their main job is to control them. So the monitoring risks imply constant communication with the stakeholders to identify the problems earlier. So you need to know when you need to get to know when bad things happen. So the techniques to monitor projects include the use of charts for the budget, for the schedule. So in every month or in every week or in every day for the case of schedule, I check the progress of the team towards the goals. And if there is a delay, then there is a problem. So we do charts for the schedule, we do charts for the budget for every month. I'm going to get a budget summary from the team, and I am going to check how much actually did I consume. If I see that I am over budget, then I have to figure out what is the reason for that over budget, whether I am okay with that or not. As a project manager, I would also need to set regular update meetings. So in so in Scrum, for example, you might have this regular update meeting. We would consider the retrospective as a regular update meeting, because in the retrospective, we identify the risks at that time. We monitor the project. And we're going to talk about retrospective at the end of the course. So, but there are other update meeting for the case of Scrum, the daily stand-up meeting. The daily stand-up meeting that allows us to know whether things are going with the schedule or not. It allows also to know whether there are problems that the team faces or not. So those are regular update meetings. They could be, they take from, let's say, a few weeks. We do that every few weeks. We might have a regular meeting with the customer or with the sponsor, so also can get their feedback on the different aspect of the project. Having regular report, for example, a status report to the supervisor or to the customer. So those also allows to identify the risks. Making demonstration for the customer. So we also identify the risks that we are about the requirement elicitation, whether we succeeded to get the requirement or not. So that helps to monitor that. So if we exceed estimated time, then there is a problem. If there are complaints, then that hints to the problem. And those are risks, right? So we learned now a set of techniques on how to monitor. how to monitor the risk, whether this is through communication or actually through some reporting or through statistics. So those are the different aspects that allows us to identify that there are problems. Since there is a deviation between what is planned and what happens, then there are problems. Also, based on the communication, we can identify that there are problems. So if there is a problem, we need to respond. And for each project in general, we need to have a response for each project. We need to have a response strategy for the main risks at least, or for the risks that we do not tolerate, we do not want to accept. So there are different strategies for the response strategy for the risk. And here I'm talking about the response strategy, not the risk, not the response itself. So the risk strategy could be escalation. So I have a problem of the customer. I'm not getting enough requirement from the representative of the customer. I'm going to escalate that to the customer. I have a problem with some of the team members. They have a conflict and they have a fight. I'm going to escalate that to the human resource to address that, or to the supervisor to address that. So escalation is one aspect of addressing the problem. Risk acceptance here, we accept the risk, we accept the threat if that happens. So if, let's say, I would say if pandemic happens, then I'm going to accept that. The chances of happening is small, and if it happens, then I'm going to do that. Risk avoidance. I'm going to avoid exposure to this risk. For example, we decided to use a specific technology, but this technology is immature, and we know that the risk exposure is very high. We do not tolerate that. So we're going to choose another technology that is equivalent and that is mature. Risk reduction here, we take action to control that event. For example, we decided to have a project manager that has no experience. He has a training, but no experience in project management. So we're going to reduce that problem. For example, we are going to give them, so we're going to reduce that. We're going to reduce the occurrence here. The occurrence is going to decide, but at least the impact of the risk, we're going to have someone else who is going to review their work. We transfer the risk. So here we have a third party that is going to assume the risk. If we want to work on a specific technology and we do not have enough knowledge about that technology, we might hire a consultant, and the consultant, now they're going to take the risk, and those consultant or contractor, they are going to take the risk. They're going to do that part for us. So this is a transfer. So the response strategy are 5: risk escalation, acceptance, avoidance, reduction, transfer. Risk mitigation actually is, I do not consider risk mitigation as risk response, but I consider risk mitigation as risk reduction. So we mitigate the risk, then we reduce the risk. So you might argue that the term mitigation could also include the transfer and so on, but yes, it is possible. But it's easier to use that as equivalent to reduction. So the risk response basically asks, how can we control a specific risk? What the plans that we have, what to do if the identified risk happens. If we have a problem, let's say on the pandemic, what are we going to do? What is our plan B? What is our plan C? So if we talk about technology, for example, a mature technology, we might plan for alternate technology. We're going to go for the choices that we have. One decision could be that we're going to go with the choices that we have. If at some point we decide that this is a mature technology and there's a lot of problem that we have, then we need to have an alternative choices. So if we have, let's say, our risk is high staff turnover, developer change, then we might plan for extra resources. So we know that we have one team member is going to go every month. Then we have another one that is going to be another team member that is around. He's new, he does not produce much. Probably he's going to plan for an intern, and they are going to help with to mitigate that. If we know that we have problems, conflict problems, and we have coordination problems, we might need to increase the frequency of the coordination meeting to address these problems. So that's about risk response. And risk mitigation here, which is the common approach for risks, most common approach, is to take steps to reduce the risk effect. And this is similar to a swing here, where let's say here the lady said, gee whiz, Bobby, what if these ropes break? So the risk is those ropes are going to break. And if the ropes break, then the lady is gonna fall down, which both they don't like it, obviously. So the boys, so Bobby says here, don't worry, Sally. I took care of it with risk planning. You can swing away without care in the world. What is the mitigation here? Find it yourself. I'm going to put it probably in the piazza here and ask what was the mitigation technique that Bobby used so for Sally to not fall down. So now we covered the different aspect of the risk, and we need to document the risks, so that we could monitor the risks and we know what is our strategy that we planned for, and we address that. So a risk register is a document that records the results of the risk analysis, risk planning, and response planning. It includes, among other information, the list of identified risks, the rating of the identified risks, indicator of the occurrence of the risk tumors, which we could monitor. So indicator of occurrence here are things that would allow us to know that this risk has happened. So that is critical information there. And the potential response to identified risks. So I posted the template of the risk canvas here. I'm using a set of template for this project, which I like, and I find that these are really interesting. So in the cdc.gov, everyone knows now what is CDC. They have the list of the project management document. And one of them is project schedule. Another one here, there is also different other risks. The one that I use here is the risk management log. So I believe that this is a nice document, and this is posted. It's similar to what we do. Remember that different companies, they do project management differently. We have already one company, Kingland, and you can see how they do things. And you're going to have two other companies this week, and Workiva and Colin Aerospace. And you can see that the way that they do project management is different. The document, obviously, they are different, so the templates are different, but the basics are the same. For each of these companies, when they have a project, they need to have a budget, they need to have a schedule, they need to have risk, they need to have a strategy for human management, they need to have a strategy for communication. So the concepts are different. And talking that they are using Scrum is not sufficient, because Scrum, it has its own capability from project management and for some software development aspect, but it is not sufficient as project management. So they need to complement that with the other aspect, like for example the risk. So, risk management log from the CDC. So they use this template to track the risk for their project. You can see here the first column. So on the beginning, in the first rows, you need to specify what is the project, what is the project management name, and so on. The first column is an ID for the project. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, right? And the second column is the status of the risk, and that could be open, could be in progress, or it could be open. So let's see here what they have. It could be open or it could be closed. So, but not yet an issue, or closed. Actually, it's no longer considered as an active threat and can be closed, or because it happens. So the next column is the risk impact. And the risk impact here, they have three criteria, three levels: high, medium, and low in the slides. So I provided more than that. I provided 5 for the risk impact. The risk occurrence here, again, they provided for three levels: and high, medium, and low. And in the next slide, I provided 5. The E column here, the fifth column, is about what they call the risk map. Risk map is equivalent to risk exposure that we talked about, that I talked in the lecture slides. So they specify here green, yellow, and red. And for example, in the red, this is a medium probability, but high impact, or a high probability and medium impact, or high probability and high impact. They consider that this is red. This is equivalent in our risk exposure in very high or actually high. Then they have the yellow and they have the green, and in the green are, for example, we have low probability, low impact. So the next column is description of the risk. I'm going to give here for fleet management system example of risks. For example, the development environment is not stable. So that is one risk we have. The experience with it, so we do not have experience with bus development. There are potentially hardware failure. We are using hardware, but that hardware is not good enough. The quality is low. There is a need for extra hardware. So we assessed the hardware that we need for the project, but we might need more hardware for the project. Then we go here, what is the impact of the risk? So the first one, the development environment is not stable, then this will impact the schedule of the project that might delay the project. The lack of experience with the CAN bus development, will impact the quality. The codes is not going to be potentially stable. There will be a lot of bugs, and also that might impact the schedule. The need for extra hardware, this is obviously going to impact the budget. So if we plan that we are going to produce, we need, let's say, a specific number of units. And if we're going to need more hardware, then we need to multiply by the number of units, though we're going to increase the cost, which is the budget. It's going to also include the schedule because we need to wait for that extra hardware. So at the risk area here, they're going to include the schedule, they could include the cost or budget, they could include the human resource, and so on. The symptom here, those are the indicator of occurrence of the project. For example, for the case of the development environment is not stable, the developers, they spend much time to fix the development environment. So that is not stable, we have really. So it's possible that for so far, you worked on course project and the environment that we give you are stable, they are tested, but in real life, for innovative project, the development environment, they could be not stable that good. They could not be that good. So the trigger here it implies when are we going to know that the risk happened, and we need to address that. For example, for the first risk that we talked about, the development environment is not stable, we get complaints from the developers. So if you get complaints from the developer about the development environment, then we know that we have that problem, and that problem can cause a delay for the project. And so here, the next here on the risk response, we need to specify what is our response strategy. Is this going to be transfer? Going to have someone to develop it? For example, we're going to ask consultant to work on it. Or are we going to avoid it? We're going to use another development environment, or we are going to mitigate it somehow. So if we have a way to mitigate that. So this is the response strategy, the risk response strategy. Here they specify what is the response strategy. The response strategy. And there is an issue here between what is the response strategy here and the response strategy here. I would consider that this is not the response strategy, but this is contingency plan. So the response strategy here in this template is small an issue again. They specify will be high, medium, and low. So, but in the example, we can see find internal resources that meet the required skills. So, so this will be our contingency plan, or what are we going to do to address the risk? If we're going to mitigate it, what are the actions that we are going to do to address the risk? So those are on the risk strategy. So again, here this is the template from the CDC, and as I said from the beginning, different companies they have different templates, obviously, but the basic thing is that they use the same concepts that we talk about in class, about project planning, about mitigating, planning for risks, developing a schedule for the risk, and so on. But the templates, they would be different. The development processes, they would be different. The project management processes, they would be different. So the third part of your practice exercise is to develop response strategies here, and the response strategy for a set of risks. And these risks, the same one that you assess their exposure, use of immature technology for the fleet management system, limited participation of customer in requirement elicitation, team change, frequent team change, and limited experience of project manager. So for each of these, you're going to specify your strategy, whether you're going to transfer it to someone else, whether you're going to mitigate it, or whether you're going to accept it, and so on. So we're talking about the response strategy. And then you're going to specify what is your contingency plan. So what action are you going to take, if any of these, for each of these, when it happens? So you have to specify what is your contingency plan. So again, here is the link for the templates that applies for the risk, but applies for others. That doesn't mean that I'm going to use all these templates as they are, but we're going to get these as examples, on good examples on templates that organizations use. In summary, so risks are what might go wrong. The main job of project management is to control the risks. Monitoring risk implies constant communication with the stakeholders, so which allows to identify problems early on. Risk mitigation strategy are escalate, accept, avoid, reduce, and transfer. And the mitigation and the contingency plan actually is the set of actions that we would take in order to implement this strategy. I finished this lecture, and I invite you to discuss the lecture on Canvas if you have a question. Again, if you have a question, you might send me an email. You might come to my virtual office hours, or office hours in the virtual room, and you might also discuss these this question on post question on Piazza and discuss it with your colleagues. Thank you. Bye. Last thing for this part also, this we have on the project